Computer, sure. It should say it's recording somewhere, shouldn't it? It does. All right, groovy. Hi guys, welcome to our triannual. I have it's about three times a year. Sherlocki-Ann meeting. We're really excited today. We have Tanya Todd speaking to us and the whole gang of Anns and unofficially honorable Anns. We once said that as long as you have A's and N's in your name, you're an Ann. Even if you don't, we accept you. Anyone can be a Sherlocki-Ann. And unfortunately, my esteemed helper here is Ann and Andriaco can't be here today. My other, I call her Ann the wiser. She calls me Ann the younger, which is really sweet. And but we send her our love and hope all is well. And I have Tom Campbell filling in as my co-Ann. He's going to handle some of our news. And we'll go to you first, Tom. And what kind of
Okay.
Sherlockian news? Because everyone, I want you to know that Tom runs his own really great scion, the Sherlock Holmes Society of Cape Fear. And I would, if you're interested, you should definitely be on his list and come to his meetings.
Well, I appreciate that. Let me go ahead and share my screen.
Okay.
You know, when it comes to Sherlockian news, personally, I go to Facebook and I'm a member of quite a number of Facebook sites that I get news from.
Cool.
And I also go to a certain number of websites, but there's no way in the world that you can cover Sherlockian news adequately on a Zoom call. You can mention a few things that are happening, but Zoom is not a good platform for this kind of information because it requires users to have to write stuff down. I can't hand you a handout. I can send you to my website though. And my website, as you can see, is Sherlock Holmes Society. Does everyone see it?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Well, you'll notice the menu bar under my logo includes the third item, which is news. That's a new item I added just today, just for this meeting. But I'm going to leave it up. And if you click on it, oh, and by the way, my URL, the address of my website's really simple. SherlockHolmesSociety.com. I
Oh,
was amazed and astounded back in 2017 when I realized that that URL was available. I couldn't believe it. SherlockHolmesSociety.com. So if you go there, you'll get here, and then you click on news. And what I've done is I've created a page where I can just put what I consider to be highlights of news items. The first thing I have on my news item list is Scion meetings. Now, there's a number of sites you can go to for news about Scion meetings. The first one is Sherlocki-Ann.net. I'll click on that. Everyone's probably been to this website already. Looks like this. And this is a great place for a number of websites you can go to all over the world in terms of Sherlocki-Ann societies and scions. Let me see. Let me click here. All right,
or,
then
or a bunch.
I'm sorry.
There are a bunch. It's
There
amazing.
are, there are. Now I'm trying to close that. Okay, here we are. There we are. I needed to get to a place so I could navigate. I'm going to go back to my website to the news area. Also, there's the Sherlocki-Ann calendar. This is a newer site. You may or may not have been to this one, but it has Sherlocki-Ann meetings that are already scheduled to take place in August, September, October, and so forth. And it gives you a link to their website. It tells you when it's going to happen. So, and usually an email reference in terms of where you can go for that meeting. But aside from the meetings, there's a number of things that take place in the Sherlocki-Ann world. For instance, One is what I look forward to every year is the John H. Watson treasure hunt. I don't know if you've ever participated in that, but Rich Krishunas puts this together every year. Unfortunately, though, the news item about it is this year it's been postponed. It's not going to happen in 2025, which is kind of a disappointment, but we'll look for it in 2026. Another news item coming up is being sponsored by the John H. Watson Tin Box. I don't know if you've ever been to their website, but they used to do a particular article, a publication called a journal, and they're going to bring it back, and they're calling for submissions. So if you are a writer, article, book, whatever it is, you can go to my website and then email baroness.gruner@gmail.com and figure out how you can contribute to that journal. All entries are welcome. Next is the Crew of the Bark Lone Star. Everybody knows about that site. It's a very popular website, and they usually distribute a lot of news. The news item for them, though, is they also want submissions for a book they're putting together. You can email Steve Mason to get information about the book. If you go to the website here, though, and you click on submissions wanted, it'll give you all the details concerning that.
Hmm.
And then finally, here's an interesting guy that I found. Uh, I've worked with Dan a number of times. Dan is the current editor of the Baker Street Journal. And Dan and I worked together on an article that I published in the summer edition of the Baker Street Journal. I'll hold that up in just a minute after I get out of screen share. But this is an excellent article about Dan. If you click on the button there, you can actually play the podcast that he does with this particular source. So there's some ideas that you can go to in terms of what's happening in the Sherlocki-Ann world, not only meetings, but also individual items. And I'm going to keep going with this on my website. So plan to visit frequently, and you'll see what's going on in the Sherlocki-Ann world, as long as also with my own group. Now, let me stop the share here. Here we go. Here's the Baker Street Journal article I was talking about. This is the summer edition of the Baker Street Journal, and I was fortunate enough to be published in this, my very first article published in the Baker Street Journal. Really thrilled about that.
That's huge. That's
Thank you.
very prestigious.
And as long as I've got the floor, I've got to toot my own horn here. I also published a new book.
All right.
It's called The Game.
Oh, wow.
It's a lengthy book. The idea behind this book is that if you've ever wondered about what does it mean when a Sherlocki-Ann says, well, I'm playing the great game, what they're talking about is realizing or imagining a scenario where Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson are real people, and Conan Doyle was simply a literary agent helping Sherlock and Watson publish the stories in the canon. This book imagines that scenario and actually takes you through the years 1885 to 1906 with this particular book, which happens to be the marriage of Arthur Conan Doyle with Louisa Hawkins, the first marriage of Arthur Conan Doyle. And it involves everybody in the canon pretty much. So I invite you to take a look at this. It's also on my website. You can go to the SherlockHolmesSociety.com and get all the information about that. It's available on Amazon, and it's also available from my website. And that's all I have.
I appreciate that. Thanks, Tom. Please
No problem.
put the link to your website for sure in the chat and
Okay.
even the book. You should.
I'll
We'd
put
love.
the link to my website in here.
Okay. It's a very talented group of people. Sandy, do you want to do your first limerick of the day? Our friendship limerick, right?
Friendship one if you prefer. Okay. Rereading the canon does tend to offer us learning with no end. But what is much more than the stories galore is each wonderful Sherlockian friend. The end.
Very good.
Oh, no. Well, and Tom just showed us how to make more Sherlocki-Ann friends, so get
That's
busy.
right.
So as part of the Sherlocki-Anns, we are constantly finding where Anne Adler is in the canon. And today's version, we're going to be looking at the Dying Detective. I'm going to share my screen, and I made a little thing. Can you let me know if you can see it? Has it come up for you?
Yes, I have it.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna play this. I think this is big enough. I'm just gonna play this for you. When it comes to finding Anne Adler in the canon, we have a bit of a problem in the adventure of the Dying Detective because Sherlock is sick and he's at home, and it seems that the only person around is Mrs. Hudson. However, it has been suggested in the past that perhaps Anne Adler does help out Mrs. Hudson from time to time. Could this be one of those times?
I feel wretched, but no one must get near me. Stay away.
What could our dear Sherlock Holmes be up to by taking to his bed?
Is there perhaps another option?
Another option would possibly be the initial reason that Sherlock was onto Culverton Smith, and that could have been from the widow of Savage. So perhaps Anne got involved there and directed the widow to go to Sherlock Holmes for help. It's an option. As a nursemaid or helper for Mrs. Hudson, Anne would have had to trust Sherlock. She might have gotten close enough to see he wasn't sick. Let's not forget about Culverton Smith. Maybe Anne got onto him and his scientific research into poisons, and somehow she worked to get Sherlock alerted to that potential problem. It's another option.
Culverton has confessed, and thus I have carried out the pretense with the thoroughness of a true artist.
Maybe one day Anne will help Sherlock without hiding in the shadows. What do you think? Okay, let's see. Let me undo the stop share. Now we must discuss this. What do we think? Where is Anne in this story in the canon? Thoughts?
Hmm.
Well, I think you've hit on a really important point about stories of this kind. This came up when with my Agatha Christie club, which is that everybody ignores the servants. You know,
Mhm.
in order to live the lifestyle they live, there's got to be a lot more people around helping them take care of things. I mean, we assume that Mrs. Hudson is not taking care of the entire house by herself and doing the cooking and doing the cleaning and doing the laundry. But you know, they're not worth mentioning unless there's a deduction about Watson's housemaid being sloppy or whatever. So there's lots of room there for more people to be around that we're just not that are not paid attention to in the canon.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And how much would Anne have seen? Could she have noticed? Because Sherlock was keeping everyone at a distance, so they didn't notice he was faking it. She might have noticed and stayed back and let him do his thing. Any other thoughts? Do you think she could have come at it through the widow? We don't really know how Sherlock found the widow, and I mean, that sort of comes at the end of the story. How many people are familiar with this story? The dying detective.
I only remember the oysters.
And Watson hiding behind the bed.
Yeah, Watson was hiding. Well, and Watson was in and out, so and like you said, he wouldn't notice. I really do feel like Ann Adler hides his servants a lot. That would be where she could be that, Watson would have never written about her. Since we believe she exists, Ann Adler's younger sister. Well, next time, I don't even know what's next on the canon, but I think in some of these stories where Anne could be, we haven't yet written our own version of her in these, but that could happen at some point. I just think at some point, I do believe she needs to come forward somewhere down the line. How about you guys?
If she were a housemaid and she did some of the cleaning, now some of the stuff Sherlock would only let Mrs. Hudson in to do. But I'm sure she came in to do certain things, open and close the curtains and so forth when they weren't around. And so they were so used to seeing her that she sort of disappeared into the walls. She was somebody who did, uh, when Mrs. Hudson was busy, she came in and took the dirty dishes away. Well, they didn't pay any attention. The dishes were there and then they were gone when they were finished with them. And that is how it should be. And whoever the person who does it is unimportant.
You don't think Sherlock would have ever noticed her? Been like, she's listening
He
to.
might have noticed her, but he considered her as a relatively unimportant member of the household.
Yeah.
And he
Well,
just wrote her
I,
off.
given that Sherlock used the unimportant street urchins, I don't know if he would have thought of anybody as unimportant, but I do think that even if he tried to tell somebody, "Hey, that girl was in here," they'd be like, "Oh, you're hallucinating. Your fever is too high."
In this story for sure. Well, and when Culverton Smith comes over, that was a real testy point where that's the trap is being laid and Sherlock is catching him. She would have been around and had to be careful not to get involved in that. Because think of all the people that were hiding. Watson was hiding. The police were hiding somewhere. I imagine Mrs. Hudson was still there, and then we have Ann Adler was also in the background. That's a lot of.
She could have been listening at the door. I mean, there was a conversation going,
Yeah, but
and she
where were the police? They were there too. So Culverton Smith had to come in. There were a lot of people hanging. It's not that big of a flat.
well,
Where
they were outside. They were there, but they were outside in the street, so they were acting like
okay.
police being in the street until they were sent for.
So Watson was the only witness, technically.
Watson was the only actual witness, and Holmes was also the witness
Yeah,
because Holmes wasn't sick. He was just pretending to be.
true. And he had the box as proof that of being he was being poisoned or poisoning people. Interesting story. Definitely. Any other thoughts on Anne Adler in the canon?
I think Joanna was onto something that Sherlock definitely would have noticed, but he would also know that if he mentioned it, people would say, she's of no consequence, or he was hallucinating because he was sick. He
I
was
think
smart enough to know not to mention it. And if she's assisting him in the background, why would he ruin that?
I think that's a good point. He is aware, but he doesn't quite understand yet, so he's just letting it go since it's benefiting him. Very good point.
Um, this is Val.
Hey, Val.
Hi, Ann. Um, I'm trying to remember, when did Florence Nightingale come onto the scene? Was it during the
Let me Google.
Crimean Wars?
Might be.
Yeah, she was in the Crimean War.
Okay,
I
because
mean, I'm old, but not that old. But yes, it was the Crimean War.
okay, but there could also be, again, being female and just a nurse, Anne or a friend of Anne could also have been there and then left. as part of the setup. Now, and I don't mean the nurse was on the wrong side, was on the side of Culverton Smith. No. But if a doctor couldn't come immediately, and if it could be contagious, in might come the lady with the cape and the Red Cross, or whatever symbol was used for, medical assistance. And that would be another person that would go unseen. Not a doctor, not from, ooh, whatever the name of that street is that all the highfalutin doctors come from. Maybe not, maybe she was a nurse at St. Bart's. Not to say, but something like that. Or maybe a pharmacist's delivery person could also have been Anne. These are just other characters I can imagine coming in, but then leaving, but still kind of hovering, or perhaps giving some consolation to uh, Mrs. Hudson.
Good point. I like all those. I think at least in this one, we can definitely see that she could have been there unnoticed by Watson, who writes the stories or reports, as we should say. Excellent, excellent. All right.
If there was one other thing that might have happened was that Watson saw her, but Watson left her out because she didn't seem to fit into the story. After all, he was writing the story up for publication. Now, you're going to all of a sudden start to bring in this housemaid who saw stuff and walked out again, and like, so what?
Well,
It doesn't add much to the story, and if he wants to bring the tension of the story in, so you don't keep bringing good characters in for nothing, it takes some of the tension off.
Well, you also don't want to mention a woman going into a man's bedchamber.
Mhm.
In that
But
era.
she wasn't a woman. She was
The servant, yeah. No, if actually, if
nobody.
she was around and she was helping take care of, I see Watson pressing her for details once he shows up. Tell me, how does he look? But Watson would go and take that over himself.
But if she kept showing up over and over again, wouldn't he eventually be like, who is this woman? Unless he doesn't recognize her in different ways.
But think about all the times that they eat breakfast or dinner or lunch or dinner or whatever, and Mrs. Hudson really isn't actually mentioned. Now, how did the food get there? It didn't fly up there. Mrs. Hudson walked up with it, or the maid walked up with it. And Watson doesn't say a word. They're finishing their breakfast. Their breakfast just what? Fell off the roof? No. Somebody brought it up and somebody took the dishes away. And this was not worth talking about because it's as if every time we told somebody what we did, we said, I walked into the room and turned the light on. I walked out of the room and turned the light on. Who cares that you turned the light on or off? Unimportant. And so is a maid. Unimportant.
Yeah.
That's but she must have disguised herself.
Or I was
like you say, Watson would have been.
Irene Adler was a master surprise. It stands to reason that her sister would share some of those skills.
100%. Yes. We think she's come in as in disguise a lot. So,
right.
But yeah, I agree. I think definitely in this one, either as a nurse or just as her normal helping out. I think she helps out a lot for Mrs. Hudson. As you said, Mrs. Hudson, I don't know if she's of a certain age. I don't think she can be doing all this hard work that is required to take care of a bachelor.
Well, they are 17 steps up. And that's a lot of steps to go up all the time. You got to have a young girl handy so you can send her up the stairs.
And then there's a third level where the help slept because remember there's the sound of them walking up the steps and a basement because the kitchens were very often in the basement. So
but I'm under the impression
that a 4-story house needs more than one person.
Didn't Mrs. Hudson, though, occupy 221A?
Yes, I think she did. She didn't live there, but
B was upstairs.
But the actual
So
A
A
would have
went
been
downstairs.
the grounds would have been on the what we would call the ground floor, but the
Right.
kitchens were very often in the basement.
So then the kitchen was below that. Okay.
So she had to go down to the kitchen for everything
So more
and
than
come up.
17 steps.
And there were four flights to clean, and we did have Roombas and even vacuums and all of the things that we have now, and cleaning services that came in. So
Well,
she
now
made
I feel
her a
sorry for
helper, and it
Anne.
was just not talked
Anne
about
was a
because
maid. She had to do a lot of work to be there helping out in the
Yeah.
background. Jeez.
she
Yeah.
was a maid, and she probably worked from 6 in the morning to about 8 or 9 o'clock at night.
Mhm.
Boy, that's
Well, I'm
dedication.
glad we finally got that cleared up.
Yeah, there we go. Poor Anne.
Aren't you glad, ladies, that we don't have to do that? We don't have that job.
Yes, yes, yes. Okay. Well, we're going to move on because we have a great guest speaker today. Tanya Todd is an author, a filmmaker, an activist for diversity in film and literature. And she's also a champion, I've mentioned to you before, of other writers, which is, I find, a wonderful quality in anybody, but Tanya takes it to the next level. I saw for myself how much she helps other authors, and she helped me when we were buddies next selling books at the book festival, which I was lucky to meet her. But she's also written and compiled this great comic lit essays where she does discuss Irene Adler's connection to comics. And I hope she talks a little bit about that, but please welcome Tanya Todd. And I'm so glad she could join us today.
Thank you. I feel like it was very fortunate for both of us that we ended up paired together. It's like we didn't know each other. We live in the same place. And then, hey, we have this shared connection here.
Exactly. It's great.
So thank you very much for inviting me here. Comic Slit is an essay collection that talks about the importance of comic books as a valid form of art. It talks about how many of the characters that we know and love harken back to the days of classic literature, the Bible, mythology, history, things like that. So there are some who do not value comic books. They don't think that it's considered highbrow, but think about 100 years ago, if you were reading a novel, people look down on you like, oh, I don't read novels, I don't read fiction. And that's the stuff that we hold up as the standard for high art at this point. So our point is that just like any form of art, comic books can be high art. There can be some stinkers as well, but that's true for any type of art. And in this comics lit essay collection, several of us have made these one-on-one comparisons. Some people have actually written about their personal experience with comics, or there's one that talks about teaching comic books in the university classroom, Saga in particular. And my essay compares Irene Adler to Catwoman. And I came to this conclusion watching the BBC, well, not conclusion, but this theory, watching the BBC series Sherlock. The Irene Adler in that version, she was just so sexy and powerful, and she was a dominatrix and bisexual, and she uses a riding crop, and the way that she dominates Sherlock, it was like, I think that they're trying to make her like Catwoman. Because I'm a huge Catwoman fan, and I'm watching this going, man, I really like this version of Irene. And it's, even though I had seen the Robert Downey Jr. movies, I didn't even really recognize Irene Adler in that portrayal. I recognize her now because I've done so much research, but I completely forgot about that character in the movie because she wasn't what I consider Irene to be. And so I looked into it. I was going to write an essay about how the Hulk is Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And when I sat down to write my essay, it came out Catwoman. It was just meow. And she's my favorite character in the comics. She's my favorite character, period. So it makes sense that she would be my first essay. And so as I was digging into it, saying that they actually stole it from her, it turns out, oh no, Catwoman was the thief, which makes sense. She is a thief by profession. If you look at the original versions of both of these characters, they are introduced in almost identical ways. So Irene Adler wears a disguise in her story, which is the Scandal of Bohemia, and she follows Sherlock Holmes in disguise. Catwoman is wearing a disguise of a withered old woman, and she uses that to get onto a yacht where Batman is present. But he's there because he's trying to figure out who's been doing all of these jewel thieves or thefts. And so both of them are in disguise. Sherlock and Batman use the same method for discovering their opponents, which is a fake fire. In A Scandal in Bohemia, he has Watson throw a smoke bomb into the window and yell fire, and that's how he figures out where the safe is and what she's hiding, because she's hiding that photograph. And then in the Batman comic that Catwoman first makes her appearance, he has Robin pull the fire alarm and she runs away as herself because she's trying to escape a fire. Well, how is this withered old woman who is, hobbling along? That's how he finds her. He figures it out. So both of them are discovered in the same way: a false fire, a disguise. And it's like, okay, that feels intentional. And in both versions of their introductions, the detectives solve the case, but the woman gets away. Now, in Batman's case, he lets her go, but the exclamations that the detectives say when they see their real faces are almost, it's, different style because one is comic book style. So it's like a beautiful young woman in all caps, and more articulate, Sherlock is like, she has the kind of beauty that a man would die for. So it just was very odd that they chose almost identical origin stories for these characters. But if you think about it, Batman is the world's greatest detective, and that's what Sherlock used to be. And the creators of Batman have admitted that Sherlock was one of the inspirations for our modern Batman. And so it stands to reason that his foil would be Irene Adler. And so even this is something that isn't in my essay, something I found out this year. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the 60s Batman series.
Yeah.
Well, Eartha Kitt was one of the Catwomen, and she had this thing about Belgravia. Like her hijinks were all like she was taking everything to this place, Belgravia. Well, in the Sherlock Holmes series, it's called A Scandal in Belgravia, which is another connection that I, the Catwoman person, didn't even recognize until this year because I happened to be watching scenes. I was just watching a bunch of Catwoman scenes, like all of the 60s Catwoman. For whatever reason, I was just watching all of them, and I was Belgravia. So I bet there's more that I've yet to uncover. And Catwoman also has a little sister that no one knew about.
Who?
Mm-hmm. Maggie. But hey, there's another Irene and Anne connection, right?
We didn't know it. To make a note of that.
She had a hidden sister, which is canon now.
Wow.
So it was just very interesting as I went on this journey, assuming that they stole from Catwoman, which they did, but it was, kind of right back at you.
Mm-hmm.
Catwoman stole first, and it's cyclical. And then there's even a Batman movie called, what is it, Gaslight by Gotham, I think it is, where it's a
Gotham by Gaslight.
Oh, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a Victorian version of Batman, And they have Batman playing a very Sherlock Holmes type character, and Selena Kyle is a very Irene Adler like character. She is an actress, and she solves crimes with a whip.
Yeah, that animated feature is based on one of the what they called Elseworlds, which was Batman in other settings and venues and such. So there's a graphic novel version of that as well.
Yeah. So I was going to have a lovely presentation, but again, my computer died and I'm using this temporary one, but I have some of the photos. I was going to try to
You should be able to share it.
yeah, okay. So bear with me. I'm not familiar with this computer at all. So
If you scroll over or touch over your image, it should come up at the bottom of the screen, a green share button. Yeah. Oh, Max.
I was just going to say your computer is passed beyond the Reichenbach, is what you're saying.
Yeah. Oh, that's working. You see it. That's funny, Max.
So this is Irene Adler from the Sherlock series. And even this looks like the kind of image that you might see in a comic book.
Yeah.
I'm going to grab another one.
I think the color choice was amazing in that picture of her.
And then this right here looks like Irene Adler, but it's Selena Kyle.
It's amazing.
I apologize for how clumsy I am with the share.
It's working. No
Like
problem.
I don't even have a mouse. I'm just using like the mouse pad. Here's another of Selena, who looks very much like Irene Adler there.
Oh yeah. Look at the whip.
Then we have Irene Adler with her riding crop, dominating poor Sherlock. He's quite taken with her.
Yeah. He's allowing it.
Yeah. Well, he's not allowing it.
Oh, he doesn't.
He busted him. This one I just love. Another domination. This is my favorite Catwoman.
Will Keaton, Michelle Pfeiffer.
Yes.
At least they have the ears in common.
Yeah.
When was her little sister introduced?
And then here's the woman. Are you asking about Maggie?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I don't know what year it's introduced. I mean, there are several different versions that have, you know, a young Selena Kyle and they show her sister, or they have her going to her sister was like hidden away in a nunnery, basically, to protect her. But then there are times where she lives with her. It depends on which version of the comics that you're looking into.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But a lot of what she did originated from just protecting her. Like all the bad things that Selena got into was to protect her sister and keep her innocent.
Looks like first appearance was February 1989.
Thank you.
Wow.
Sure.
And then I feel like I had one more picture. That
So the Catwoman from the movies, when DC was located in New York City, they've since moved out to the West Coast. Their main lobby was set up like the top of a Gotham City building, and they had statuettes with the Batman costume and the Catwoman costume in the lobby, which was really cool to see.
Love it. Yeah, that would be awesome. And you see this right here looks like that first image that I showed you of Irene, where she is opening up her closet. Just very similar in style, in design, and definitely in the way that they foil their respective detectives.
Well, I think that probably relates to how pulp writers see the femme fatale character type too.
Mhm. But I think that what makes them stand out is that it's their brain
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
Batman and Sherlock like about them. Like, sure, you can appreciate their physique, but that's not the thing that gets them. There are tons of beautiful women in their worlds.
Mm-hmm.
It's that they look like that. And I mean, to be what they say in the Sherlock story is that she has the brain of a man.
That
No.
was considered a compliment back then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's what attracted him. And even, their names. Like she was the woman, where in the original Catwoman appearance, she was referred to as the cat and eventually became Catwoman. Neither of them had names to start. Like so many people didn't even know Irene Adler's name for a long time, even though it's there. People didn't pay attention to it because of the whole the woman aspect. And I don't like to think of it as she's just the woman. I don't think of it that way. I think of it as the woman, the one you notice, the one you carry around, the one who stays with you, the one you let go.
Well, wasn't that really Sherlock's description of her? Like the only woman for him, he meant. Like
Right.
it
Exactly.
wasn't insulting. It was like, there's no other. She's the epitome.
Singular. That's right. Exactly. And if you dig deeper into it and you go into the fan fiction elements, there are versions where Irene and Sherlock have a child. There are versions where Bruce and Selina have a child. You could continue with this outside of the canon, but
Well,
within the canon, there's so much that is similar.
DC actually published the adventures of Batman and Catwoman's daughter because she was called the Huntress.
Right.
And when they revamped the universe, she ended up being a mobster daughter that was avenging the destruction of her family or something. But I always liked it as she had Batman's detective skills and Catwoman's athletic skills, I guess we should say, gymnastics skills.
Yeah. Yeah, and one of the points that I reference in my essay is that they beat the detectives at their own games. Like Selina slinks around in Batman's shadows. He's the one who's supposed to she's the only one who can sneak up on him. And he's the one who disappears when people are talking. She does that to him. He's like, huh, that's what that's like. And then Sherlock, who figures out everyone, he's just question marks with her. Like, how are you doing this? How are you reading me? He finds her baffling, which makes her all the more interesting. And they are aware of their power over men. And what they do is they use those stereotypes, those gender stereotypes, and they use it against the men who are trying to best them.
Mm-hmm.
And it works.
So I don't know if you're aware of this, but there is actually a fairly well-known comic character named Irene Adler.
I heard of that recently, that there is a comic book version.
Yeah, well, no, not a comic version of our Sherlock Irene Adler. When Chris Claremont and John Byrne created Destiny as a mutant in the 80s, they named her Irene Adler as kind of an homage.
I hadn't read about it. I just heard someone.
Yeah. They used the name, but then a couple years ago, they actually did a sort of a story where Destiny and Mystique are lovers now that we can have homosexuality in comics, because they couldn't do it originally back when they were created.
Yeah.
And Destiny is Irene Adler in the 1800s, and Mystique, who's the shapeshifter, the blue shapeshifter from the X-Men, is Sherlock Holmes. So they've actually published a comic story where that's the case in the Marvel universe.
I like that.
Yeah.
Sounds like you need to write an essay for a future comics.
Well, I have a website called SherlockComics.com, which is all appearances of Sherlock Holmes stories in comics. And there's a page of related characters that talks about the Adler appearances. And in fact, if you look at the next issue of Sherlock Holmes magazine out soon, I wrote an article called Irene Adler in the Comics, which looks at all the appearances of Irene Adler that I am aware of.
Well, now here's another one to add.
Yeah. So,
here's a version. They just don't call her Irene.
yeah. Well, I unfortunately, when I hear Catwoman, I think of Jim Balance, boobs bigger than her head version.
Yeah.
I always kind of made me like not so much a favorite of that version of the character.
And I used to love that version because it was finally it's the one that looked closest to me because I'm very tall and I have, big curly hair and my first boyfriend gave me the first like 8 comics as a gift. So it's very special to me, but I reread it recently and it was, there, I won't stand behind its literary merit, but I appreciate that there was finally, let's say, a tall, curvy, curly-haired version of Catwoman. And well, she's not biracial. It was the closest I was going to get in the actual comics. Now, there are biracial versions of Catwoman now in the comics. There are Black versions of her, like actually in the comics. Like I think Year One has her as a Black woman.
Oh, that's good.
Well, Year One definitely has a adoptive sister, younger sister. They're both hookers, aren't they? And
Yes.
She's taking care of the younger woman.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's another version of Maggie.
Why hookers? I just like, isn't there anything else?
Because that's how difficult it was to survive in Gotham. Like it's all that was available, and she could control her own fate doing it that way.
A certain amount of what's a woman, out on the streets going to do to survive. So plus a lot of men write comics.
There you go.
But if you think about like the Victorian era, a lot of women did that to control their own fates.
Mm-hmm.
Even if they had a regular job that wasn't making ends meet on the side, they would do this. And it was perfectly acceptable in a lot of places. It was just something you did, and you were still able to get married and have a family if you chose to. In the movies, it is portrayed as though the Victorian era was always so Puritan that it was only the upper class that was treated like that. But the working class people, you had to eat, and food was very scarce in those days. And so people didn't fault you if you did that on the side.
And in truth, even in Victorian days, even the upper class women, they had affairs. They
had
affairs.
Husband
went off to
take a lover,
whites or wherever. No, to whites or wherever, or to his girlfriend or girlfriends that he had on the side, and she had something to amuse her. They were just a little bit quieter about how they did it.
Right, they're extracurricular.
Extracurricular.
Well, marriage was a business proposition. So, the fact that who you were in love with or fascinated by or whatever, that was completely separate. So
the Duke wanted his bride's money, and she wanted his bloodline. And once she had a couple of kids or 3 kids or whatever number she decided was good, she went off and just had herself a gay old time.
Right. There were contraceptives back then. There were condoms back then. There's so little that is reported about contraceptives in that era, but there were a lot of options. I've been doing my research because I'm writing a Dracula retelling from Mina Murray's point of view. And I've just learned so much about the Victorian era that you don't usually see portrayed. Also, it's such a wide era, like because it spans so many years. If you look at the end of the Victorian era, it's not recognizable for the beginning of it. Like the people who lived that span must have been like the people of the early 1900s, or just like looking at the days here, people who are still alive from back then. Like, can you imagine all of the changes that have happened in technology?
Yeah, it's huge. My grandmother lived to be 100, and so they used to have horse-drawn carriages. That I once asked her, "Did you have?" And she's like, "Well, we used to rent them. So you would rent a buggy with a horse just for the day." To modern day, she lived through all of that, the invention of so many things, television. Yeah, it's crazy to
Microwaves,
yeah, all of it. But very good. I mean, you've sort of opened my brain. I hadn't even thought about these connections. They obviously borrowed back and forth from each other with the more recent, obviously not Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, but the other Sherlock books
no,
that we've seen.
the adaptations definitely were aware of it, because why would they name it
Yeah,
Belgravia? Like, why would they make that connection? And it's subtle. Like, they didn't say, "Hey everyone, guess what we're doing."
it's an
They made it
Easter egg,
subtle, but
right?
it
Easter egg.
yes.
I love that they're wearing the same black lace too. That was like, wow,
Right.
very cool. Does anybody have any other questions for Tanya? I'm I'm amazed at maybe what you're going to write next.
I am working on, with the other co-editor, we're doing one together, and it is a comparison between Batman and Bruce Wayne and Prince Hal and King Henry V.
Oh,
We're doing it as a play.
a play?
Yes, the play is the thing.
All right.
Wow.
Where are you going to
Fantastic.
produce it? Or is
Well,
it
we're
not
we're
that far
going as a
along?
play,
Just writing.
but that is a future element that we're going to do. It's like, you know what, when we do cons, we can probably have performances of this, and it'll just be a conversation between us, because that's the play, is us discussing the four characters, if you will, because they are four very distinct personalities. Or we'll say two distinct personalities, but two are Prince Hal and Bruce Wayne, and two are King Henry and Batman.
Oh, cool. Well, somebody here will know. There's a very famous playwright that wrote some Sherlock Holmes ones where Irene is like his wife. What was that? Was guy? Forgot it was at one of the Sherlocki-Anns, and they produced them. They were highly successful
Are you
plays.
talking about Ken Ludwig?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's
Yeah.
so. I agree. The play is the thing. Um,
You
that's
are a wealth of knowledge, Joanna.
He is. That's why I wanted you two to meet. I'm so glad you're both here. The only two people I've ever met that know all about comics and Sherlock Holmes. I'm like, you guys got to know each other.
Yeah. Well,
I'm going to put my email in the chat, because I would like you to stay connected with me, Joanna. But also,
Sure.
Tom, I have an author meet and greet, and I'd like to invite you to participate if you want to share your book.
Cool.
Me?
Yes.
Share my book?
Yes.
Okay.
Email me and I will get you scheduled for Dime Grinds.
Cool.
Yeah, oh, this is great. I'm doing it too, coming up. So it's really a fun, I think
Yeah, the authors come, they talk about their author journeys, they read a little bit from their work, they talk about what inspired them to write their particular book, and then answer audience questions. And at the end, we share their links in the hopes that people will buy their books.
always,
cool.
Always important. Well, thank you, Tanya. I just I love this topic,
Very
and
good.
I'm so excited for having met you, and I hope you can join more Sherlocki-Ann events.
Thank you.
A welcoming group, and I think they would like your book.
I really like the Ann part of it, that Sandy, Joanna.
I sign any emails to this group as lowercase s, uppercase an, lowercase ndy.
Just to point to it, right?
In case somebody doesn't understand.
Yeah, it works. It works.
It works.
We were, it all came out of a joke at a Sherlocki-Ann meeting. Ann and Andreaco and I were like, I think she was the one that said it. We were going, Sherlocki-Anns, we're Anns,
Yes.
Sherlocki-Anns. And then now we're a Scion, and we've pulled you all in. And we
Very
have
cunning.
Max is Maximilian, right, Max?
Right.
That is correct. Although I don't lean into the yeah as much as the
Yeah.
but yeah.
Well, but maybe now you will.
There you go.
Did anybody else have something to share while we have everybody here? I do try to keep us to an hour meeting. Any good news you want to share? No good news?
I think Valerie is waving her hand.
Oh,
Yeah.
Hi there. Well, thanks. I just wanted to say thanks so much for carrying the torch or, carry whatever. Thank you for bringing this newish Scion to life. And it's really, really been fun. I'm learning a lot more about, about some alternatives to the plot, but just also, it's been a fresh look, at the canon and the rest. And I don't know if anyone has mentioned that, but it makes for me reading the canon itself a whole lot more fun. I'm always looking for Anne around a corner somewhere. So thank you very much for your efforts.
well, thank you. That's good to hear. Let's see who, Micah, you raising a hand? You have to unmute. Yeah.
Hey, long time listener, first time caller. Thanks for taking my call. I appreciate it. And first of all, thank you for these wonderful meetings. Tanya, thank you. That was absolutely fascinating. And I have written a play about Dr. Watson and Sherlock Holmes. Now, so far, no Sherlockian has been interested. And so I got to read the room. So if anyone here on this Zoom meeting is interested in Sherlock Holmes and you want to read a new play, I'm going to include my email address. And if you have anything nice to say about it, please do. But again, so far, no one's been interested. So maybe I should do it on Irene Adler and Catwoman next time. I know people will be interested if I did that. So maybe that will be my third play. But
You know what
anyway,
you should
thank you
do? You
again.
should do a stage
Yeah.
read. You should have a reading and invite everyone to be present for the reading, and then it'll be a performance rather than just someone sitting and reading your play.
We are going to do that. Yeah, we're producing the play in November, and there is going to be a preview and a staged reading. So yeah, good advice, and thank you, Tanya, and thank you, everybody, and
Well, and
wish us
feel
luck.
free to share it. I mean, Tom has a great website that he shares information like that when it comes available, and so does Rich.
Okay.
So we just need to get the word out. I can't imagine that there are Sherlockians that wouldn't be interested.
Yeah.
I was surprised too, but again, it doesn't have the sexiness of Catwoman or Catwoman. So yeah, I need someone with a cat of nine tails or something. But anyway,
Yeah.
thank you again, guys. I appreciate it and wish me luck.
We do. We wish you a lot of luck with that. Cool.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say thank you to Tom for making me aware of Sherlocki-Ann.net because it turns out they have some really old information about our Scion on there that I need to get corrected. And thank you very much to Tanya because I actually had not heard this connection before for all the reading I've done in comics and Sherlocki-Anna. So that was great. I really appreciate
Happy to
it.
teach you something because you seem to know so much.
Oh, fantastic. That's great. We always close out with a limerick that Sandy wrote for us.
A toast to the Sherlocki-Anns. We're made up of Sherlocki-Anns. We like Sherlock Holmes. We've read all his tomes and psst, secret, not all members are Anns. To the Sherlocki-Anns.
Hear, hear.
Cheers. That's a great one, Sandy. Thank you so much.
Thank you for asking me.
All right, I'm going to end the recording.